The town of Marlow was a quiet, picturesque place nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Life moved at a leisurely pace, and the townsfolk prided themselves on their close-knit community. However, the tranquility of Marlow was shattered one fateful evening when a blood-curdling scream echoed through the night. Emma, a young woman in her mid-20s, sat bolt upright in bed. Her heart pounded in her chest as she listened to the eerie silence that followed the scream. She glanced at her clock, 2:47 a.m. Her husband, Mark, stirred beside her, groggy with sleep. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Mark rubbed his eyes and nodded. "Yeah, it sounded like it came from the woods." The next morning, the town was abuzz with rumors. People whispered about the scream and speculated about its source. Some thought it was a wild animal, while others believed it was something far more sinister. Emma and Mark joined their friends, Lisa and Tom, at the local diner to discuss the incident. "It didn't sound like an animal to me," Tom said, stirring his coffee absently. "It sounded human." Lisa shuddered. "It's creepy. I hope it's just someone's idea of a prank." Over the next few days, more unsettling events occurred. Pets went missing, and strange noises echoed through the night. The once peaceful town was now gripped by fear. The sheriff organized search parties to scour the woods, but they found nothing. One evening, Emma and Mark decided to visit the old, abandoned laboratory on the outskirts of town. The lab had been shut down years ago after a controversial genetic research project was deemed too dangerous. As they approached the dilapidated building, a sense of foreboding washed over them. "Are you sure about this?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with unease. Emma nodded. "We need to know what's going on. Something isn't right." They pushed open the rusted door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. As they explored the lab, they stumbled upon a hidden room behind a heavy metal door. Inside, they found stacks of files and old research equipment. Emma picked up a file labeled Project Furia. Her eyes widened as she read the contents. The project had involved genetic manipulation aimed at enhancing human abilities, but the experiments had gone horribly wrong. The subjects had become violent and uncontrollable, leading to the lab's shutdown. "Mark, look at this," Emma said, handing him the file. "This explains everything." Mark's face paled as he read the details. "We need to show this to the others." That night, they gathered at Lisa and Tom's house and shared their discovery. The group was horrified by the implications. The genetic experiments had been conducted on unwitting townsfolk, and the recent disturbances were likely caused by the escaped subjects. "We have to stop this," Tom said, his voice firm. "But how?" Emma suggested they gather more evidence and confront the sheriff. They spent the next few days combing through the lab, finding more files and video recordings of the experiments. The footage showed the subjects undergoing grotesque transformations, their bodies contorting and mutating into monstrous forms. With the evidence in hand, they went to the sheriff. He listened to their story with skepticism but agreed to investigate. As they led him to the lab, a chilling howl echoed through the woods. The group froze, their blood turning to ice. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the shadows, attacking the sheriff. The group fought back, managing to fend off the creature. It was a horrific sight. Its body was a twisted mass of muscle and sinew, with glowing red eyes filled with rage. "We need to get out of here," Lisa screamed, pulling Emma towards the door. They fled the lab, the creature hot on their heels. As they reached the edge of the woods, the sheriff collapsed, his wounds too severe. Mark and Tom tried to help him, but it was too late. The sheriff's last words were a warning. "There are more of them." Panic set in as they realized the town was in grave danger. They decided to split up. Emma and Lisa would warn the townsfolk, while Mark and Tom would gather weapons and supplies. The town was in chaos as the creatures emerged from the woods, attacking anyone in their path. Emma and Lisa ran door to door, urging people to take shelter and arm themselves. Mark and Tom returned with rifles and makeshift weapons, and the townsfolk rallied together to defend their homes. The night was a blur of violence and terror. The creatures were relentless, their fury seemingly unstoppable. As dawn broke, the survivors regrouped at the town square, their numbers dwindling. "We can't keep this up," Tom said, his voice hoarse. "There has to be a way to stop them." Emma remembered something from the files, a possible antidote hidden in the lab. They decided to risk returning, hoping to find a way to end the nightmare. As they entered the lab once more, the air was thick with tension. They found the antidote in a locked cabinet, along with instructions on how to administer it. Armed with the antidote, they returned to the town. The creatures were still rampaging, but the group managed to inject a few of them. Slowly, the antidote took effect, and the creatures began to revert to their human forms. The process was agonizing, but it worked. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the last of the creatures had been subdued. The survivors were exhausted but relieved. The nightmare was over. In the aftermath, the town of Marlow slowly began to rebuild. The full extent of the lab's experiments was revealed, and the responsible parties were brought to justice. The townsfolk vowed never to forget the horror they had endured and to ensure such a tragedy never happened again. As for Emma, Mark, Lisa, and Tom, they remained haunted by the memories of that fateful night. They knew they had done the right thing, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would never fully heal. And in the quiet moments, when the night was still and the shadows long, they couldn't help but wonder if there were more secrets hidden in the depths of the abandoned lab, waiting to be uncovered.